I'd like to thank Dr. Talbot for running the meeting 2 months ago. And we do have minutes, although there were a lot of inaudible parts to that meeting. It looked like something maybe from the Nixon era. But anyway, most of the minutes were sent out. I was looking for a quick motion, if we can, and a vote on to accept those minutes, even with the inaudible. Someone?
I wasn't there.
You saw the minutes. They came to you in the mail.
Never done it.
Motion. Second. Anyone opposed? I got to move right along to interim program agency coordinator. If we can get started and move along.
So after the last meeting, requested to put a couple of advisors together. There are 4 advisors right now circulating. I'm not sure if they made it on email or not. If you want to just read the titles off there, Fiona, real quick.
These were at the recommendation from the last meeting.
Transport of patients receiving tissue fibrinogen activators, extending medication expirations during shortage, use of alternative medications during times of medication shortage, and alternative administration route for dexamethasone.
So besides those 4 plus the QA issues, that's what program agencies are doing for REMAC.
We'll try and let those circulate a little bit. We'll come back and let people have a chance to look at those, and we'll try and get a vote later on. Anything else to present today? All right. Do you have anything from Donna? Really?
Short of the QA discussion as far as defining who's on the
Right. What we're going to ask is that anyone that's interested in sitting on QA committee, please, as that sign-in goes around, make a notation on there. So we can identify QA committee. It's not going to be carved in stone, obviously. If someone wants to leave or if someone wants to join, we can make those. We do need to have a listing. How many people just passed the paramedic class? 8 out of?
The original 16?
But how many took the test?
9.
9. So we have one that did not, but 8 out of 9
Test in
passed.
July.
All right, great.
The one that took the Monroe Livingston, the Monroe County one, Lou, passed the one through Pete's class. So there's one more in this region.
Oh, okay. That's. Oh, we did pass.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I guess
These guys carded not too long ago.
And I haven't been paying attention to my social media. Darn. All right. Recently back from CMAC and SEMSCO meetings in Troy. Dr. Talbot attended with me and is still sitting here today, so he didn't get turned off too much by it. For those, most of you probably know, but we do have a new director for the Bureau, Ryan Greenberg. He introduced himself. Seems very, very energetic and very interested in moving things ahead. It sounds like he's still kind of checking things out. He didn't really put anything to a definitive task yet, but his question to everyone, and it's not a bad question actually to ask all of us, is what would it take to keep you in EMS for another 10 years? So my answer to him was no way, but that's just me. He's actually, I tell you, I emailed him shortly after the meetings. He got back to me at like 2 o'clock that night, that morning. He's very reachable and is it feels like a breath of fresh air for the time being. The emergency light protocols did finally make it to CMAC or to SEMSCO and were passed. As you know, there was no quorum at the last meeting, so we were finally able to get those passed. The New York City stroke protocols, they have their own set of protocols based on the Los Angeles stroke scale. Not all that different than what we're looking at doing in this region. They were passed. Some new changes, minimal changes to the AMT protocols with some changes in doses and what they can and cannot do. There was an AMT protocol for chest trauma that got passed. And the BLS protocols, were discussed at medical standards, a lot of discussion. They're back to the committee, and they're going to come back in September, hopefully maybe ready to be voted on. There's an agency in Nassau County that was had their ALS services suspended. Long discussion on that, and the vote was to uphold the suspension. And the rest of it was nothing, I think, that we really need to bring forward here. Bill Little? Oh, there you are. Thank you very much for putting out a very nice set of minutes for those. Appreciate it. You didn't quite go as far as Mike McAvoy, but thank you. We'll tell that to Mike. All right. I really don't have anything else from my standpoint to present. RSA?
So, the committee met last month, and we met on some issues, and we sent out to the doctors. I hope all the doctors got it. The proposed RSI regionalization policy. There were a lot of questions. When we did this about, was it Dutch, 7 years ago, 8 years ago? Yeah.
Before that.
Okay. We had some good ideas, but it seemed like we tried to do too much too soon, and things got off the wayside. So what this proposal is, it's pretty much the summary of the RSI program. It goes through objectives, goals. It does identify the agencies that are involved in this. All RSI agencies are supposed to have somebody on the committee. Also talks about eligibility for new providers, and also what we did not have was remaining a credentialed RSI provider. There were some talks about things that we needed to do that we never got a chance to verify to make sure that providers were doing it. The other hot topic was reciprocity. It means if somebody's cleared an RSI provider in another region, how do they become an RSI provider in this region? Currently, that is just they have to take the class. Also in here, talks about training and certification process, especially training after the initial certification has been made.
Which includes a annual procedure of the data lab.
By the January 1st.
Right, which we have to talk about. We decided that there should be some sort of procedural lab. However, the major procedural lab that's available is at Strong Memorial Hospital, and that's already done. So something that this body can do is maybe the region hosting their own cadet.
Who's paying for it?
We'll get there. Would probably come down to the agency level or something like that.
So to run a cadaver lab, we've got the personnel to do it. It's the only thing we don't have is a cadaver. And honestly, you can provide a cadaver with full service for anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000. Split amongst every agency, that's not a great deal of money, and there might be some money available from some other sources. So I think financially it's doable.
I think it was like $1,500 for
for
Strong.
an agency to go to Strong.
Yeah, it's $1,500.
How much?
$1,500
For the each agency?
No, you got your own cadaver for that.
Yeah, you buy
That's
your own
strong.
cadaver for $1,500.
Because they
They
have-
probably have more cadavers.
But the problem is
Strong has lots of
the
cadavers.
problem with Strong is that the Melrose agencies take priority, which obviously they should. But
So there's no reason why we can't do our own cadaver lab. Pricing, like I said, with transportation, the services to provide a place that's protected against body fluids, the cleanup, it's somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 per cadaver. We may have to share some cadavers, which isn't the worst thing in the world, amongst a couple agencies. So I think that's definitely doable. We can look into some funding from other sources.
We also decided that there will be as was in the past, there will be a fee for the test. That also could be a pool for that.
I mean, one of the other things, I suppose, it'd be nice to approach some of the colleges in the region to see if there was any possibility of working on something with them.
Do you want to chiropractic college?
That's kind of what I was implying. I mean, I don't want to volunteer them, but.
No, I just, I remember something.
You know, I think, you know, in return for maybe some assistance, might be us trying to assist the chiropractic college, say, getting cadavers. You know, I've referred at least one family there already. So if you folks got more cadavers out of the deal, it could be a good relationship. So it's something kind of explore. Okay. We could, I mean, it's something we could definitely do here at the college, but it's not going to be a cadaver per service for $1,500.
There's 8 agencies. If it was $2,000, it's like $250 an agency, if they're part of the RSI program.
To share one cadaver.
To share one cadaver.
Yeah. So only one person is going to get to do that first crike. You know, we can get a two dozen chest tubes, maybe. You know, and we can. Believe me, I do cadaver labs, and we can get a fair amount of use out of cadaver. But certain things we're just not going to get everyone to do fresh. But it is doable.
So with those updates from the RSI committee to really the regionalization plan that was updated for the first time since 2010, I believe, is when we put that together the first time.
Yeah.
That we had a wealth of input from Dr. Surratt as he could not be there, and we took all that into this new document. So I guess technically that comes forward to this body as a second motion from the RSI committee.
Yep.
Any discussion? I would like to personally also thank Dr. Surratt for his time and energy that he's put into this project over the years.
Just for the record, it was a Bruce Springsteen concert and I got tickets, so come on.
Listen, the difference in RSI in this region from before till now, I mean, I try to review all the RSIs and intubations that I can find. I probably miss a few, but I try to review as many. And no one would believe the quality that we're seeing in the last couple of years. No one else will believe that our selection of patients, the way the procedures are done, and the follow-up is being done as well as it is. Because no one else, I think, around can compare to what we're doing right now. So.
Testament to the agencies as well, because they've maintained the responsibility throughout. I would say that at the time we originally did it, we had a big battle with Monroe County about which way was better, and now they're using our way.
Yep.
So,
We're cheaper than them.
and we're cheaper.
So.
Now, along with this, have we made any headway with Monroe County regarding med control out of Strong?
I believe they're waiting for this.
Okay.
It was discussed, and I was told that we would get an answer. And have you been to Melrose? Okay.
I believe there was a table discussion up there, and I think they are waiting for our
Yeah, I think
procedure.
Jeremy was waiting for this.
Well, any further discussion? So I think it's just since already seconded motion, it's a vote. Voting members, all in favor of this? Raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Bravo, nice job. We'll get this to Monroe County as well?
Yep.
All right. Got anything further from RSI?
Got a bunch on the next committee list, though.
All right, so we're going to skip over advanced, no, we'll go to advanced practice.
Drop that one. So 2 seconded motions from the ALS committee. First up is a regional clearance process. This was discussed, revised, discussed, revised, discussed, and then revised again over the last probably 2 quarters.
Yep.
And it all boiled down to a 1 1/4 page document. by the time we were done and got a lot of the fluff out of it. Real quick, I'm just going to kind of go through what the regional clearance process for the AEMT on forward is going to be. Your certification requirements are going to be a certification of the DOH, CPR compliant with the AHA ECC guidelines from the AHA, the Red Cross or equivalent, advanced cardiac life support for CCs and paramedics, pediatric advanced care, PALS, PAP, EPC, something like that for critical care and paramedic. Trauma advanced care is a recommendation, PHTLS, ITLS, things of that nature. And NIMS 100, 200, 700, and NIMS IS5A, the hazmat awareness level or equivalent. So if the spirit of that is if somebody comes in and they have firefighter 1, they don't have to do the hazmat requirement over again. Protocol testing, they're going to take the updated protocol exam as they do now. Field calls, new providers to the region. They're a new person that just got out of AEMT, critical care, not anymore, or paramedic school. Those folks are going to have to complete 5 ALS level 911 calls with transport to a hospital. These calls must also be completed with 2 different regional preceptors at the candidate's level of care. For previously practicing providers transferring from a different region, they must have documentation of previous clearance from their previous medical director. These people would be considered regionally cleared. However, each agency may require a more strenuous process. So we looked at what we had that was developed back by Bob Stuber in 2011, 2012 time period for regional clearance, and we ramped that whole process up. And we streamlined it into something called skills compliance. Skills compliance reads all advanced providers must complete 1 call as an active care provider on an ALS transport to a hospital within a 90-day period, or 4 calls in a year within in the Finger Lakes region. For providers on a primary care on a transport to a hospital, provider must demonstrate skill competency to a person approved by the agency medical director. Documentation of a call from another region operating under the collaborative protocols will be considered. Providers working for agencies in the Finger Lakes region which are based out of adjoining regions are still required to meet the credentialing requirements of the Finger Lakes region regardless of their status in the home region, which was just discussed last week at the State Council. Right now, I'd like to bring this document forwarded as a seconded motion, which we may amend later, pending the actual ruling from the Bureau on agency, on staff leasing and agency, home agency versus staff leasing agency. But for right now, I'd like to at least get this document out there that we have the ability to revise come the September meeting once we have that verbiage back from the state. And we can amend it at that point. I'd just like to get something in play now for us to follow and make sure everybody's on the same page. So that is a second motion on regional clearance from the ALS committee.
Obviously, this stuff could be amended at any time.
Sure.
All right, any discussion?
So the standing of the committee is that to be a competent ALS level paramedic in this region, you have to put 1 IV in every 3 months.
Minimally. So the agency can make it.
That's what I said, but that's the definition of competency in the region.
After a long battle, yes.
Much discussion. The biggest discussion was from the smaller agencies who don't have volume. I understand, but they didn't want to have their providers uncleared because they didn't get a call in 90 days.
Okay, I'll play the devil's advocate. Maybe they should be uncleared because they're not putting an IV in
There
every
was
90 days.
significant discussion regarding that.
We'll be short a lot of ALS agencies if we do that.
No, you won't, because you'll be short 4 calls a year. That's the point that I'm making, is that keeping paramedics in place, because there's going to be, we agree, there's skill breakdown. Yeah. I just want to be clear what this document is saying, that a competent paramedic in our region can put 4 IVs in a year somewhere. Are we going to take in hospital IVs? Like, are they going to be able to go to the hospital and put an IV in?
I'm not sure I put it for a year anymore.
What's that?
I'm not sure I put it 4 IVs a year anymore.
Does anybody have volunteer paramedics anymore?
Still pull the
It
trigger.
does push it. It does
I
push
said, I
it.
don't do 4 chest tubes in a year. It's probably been a year since I've pushed it, but you gotta do it, you gotta do it.
And it does fall back to the agency's medical director. If they don't have that call every 90 days or that 4 calls a year, or the agency wants to be more proactive on their competencies, then it falls back to that agency, the medical director, to make sure that your providers are competent.
I just worry that we label a competent paramedic, like, oh, if you can be a competent paramedic in finger lace by putting an IV in every 3 months. That's the only thing you have to do.
I don't think we're saying that they're competent.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think we're saying that they maintain their competency.
There's nothing that's.
But it doesn't say they're
Right.
competent.
So minimum, so there's like minimum standard is written all over that document.
Well, even in Melrose, I only have to take one call every 6 months to stay active in the region.
It's 90 days.
Is it 90 days now? Well, 90 days. I have to take one call.
Okay. So we brought it down to 1 call a quarter. It's really every 90 days.
No, it's 90 days.
And in the event that they don't meet that, then
Yeah.
what happens to them?
They meet their medical director, the medical director verifies that they remain.
And that's written in the,
You want to read
It
this
is.
section?
It's a document, let's see. So all advanced providers must complete 1 call as an active care provider on an ALS transport to a hospital in a 90-day period, or 4 calls in a year with an agency in the Finger Lakes region. If the provider is not a primary care on a transport to a hospital, the provider must demonstrate skills competency to a person approved by the agency medical director. So, i.e. their training officer or the medical director should they choose to.
So January 1st is a really busy day, and they do 4 calls.
That's what I'm just saying.
You're good. You're good for the year.
I disagree, but not really, because
So that
you
was
got
just-
90 days.
right.
No, it says or.
We haven't said, is that or?
There was a lot of discussion.
I disagree with that, then why even have this then? The whole point is to not have somebody who hasn't practiced in 7 months take an ALS call.
That's what's going to happen.
We can,
So
we can
4
strike the 4
calls.
calls.
I think we should strike the 4
Let's
calls.
strike the 4 calls and go that way. That's fine. There's going to be some pissed off people, but that's absolutely okay.
But then it wouldn't be a seconded motion for the committee since the committee didn't vote on it.
But it can come up as a second.
4 of us right here.
There's 5
Yeah,
years,
that's-
5
that's-
years here.
Cancel and re-motion.
Make it a motion.
I'd like to withdraw the seconded motion from the ALS committee of the regional clearance process. Or we can take a motion to amend from the floor, whichever people want to do, but we'll strike 4 calls in a year. We'll make it a call every 90 days.
Does anyone want to go ahead with it as the amended document? We can, because the document has been brought to this committee.
Yeah, we can.
We can make a
turn down that
motion
and
and
then
pass it.
we'll make a new one.
Robert's rules,
It would require a new motion, I believe,
Right.
sir.
right,
Not a seconded motion is presented.
right,
Which has
exactly.
been withdrawn, correct?
Yes, I withdrew the seconded motion from the ALS.
So we need a new motion from this group, or it has to go back to the committee, the subcommittee. Does anyone want to make a motion?
So can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
As long as there's not a motion yet. So as for the smaller agencies, especially the smaller volunteer agencies, and I know you guys, a lot of you guys don't know what they are, but is there a way that they can then do a skills instead of, you know, if...
Says it.
Demonstrates skills
Skills every 90 days.
So
Says that right in there.
So that they're not saying, okay, you're done.
Yep, demonstrate skills competency to a person approved by the agency medical director.
Because what we're really looking for is that midnight to 6 in the morning type of person that will be able to come out because they work in another agency or they work something else.
But if they work somewhere else, that covers them, they get, they do their call within 90
But it
days.
says per agency.
No.
on
No,
the-
it says per provider.
We're not writing clearance processes for agencies, we're writing a
No.
blanket clearance process for the region.
Okay, I'll make the motion for the, with the exclusion of the 4 a year, and just make it a 90-day period, rolling period. Every time you put an IV in, you start a new 90 days.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. So the amended document is passed.
But the key thing, Jason, is a rolling 90 days.
It's the agency's responsibility, that's what I do.
Can we have that amended electronically and sent out to everyone?
I'm almost certain I can do that separate.
All right. You guys have
One more.
one more, all
One
right.
more. You want that one? Let's go to your baby.
So the final thing was a draft on the regional documentation standards. This is a guideline for agencies to follow that will not only streamline documentation for the region, but will also assist in better data collection. Basically, the problem we were finding is that not every agency documents ways that can help with data collection and can find ways that can be confusing things, especially in terms of IV attempts, intubation attempts. And also, one of the problems we've been discussing in the committee was medical control, specifically diversions and failed orders. People were not documenting, they were documenting stroke alerts as medical control, they were documenting orders not using medical control boxes. So basically this document goes through page 8 of EMS charts, and I know someone's going to say, well, Mike, not everyone uses EMS charts. The way this is drafted is that it's written in plain English, so that if they use a different system or they use paper PCRs, I don't know if they still do that anymore. They can still follow the same way. So it's not EMS charts specific.
There's no proprietary terms to page titles or references to anything like that.
Tying into this discussion, and from the data collection point, there are two agencies in our region that do not use EMS charts. AMR as a proprietary system, and Trumansburg uses paper in their ALS. And apparently they were granted a variance or a waiver by this body to not have to do electronic chart, even though everyone else in this region is required to do electronic charts.
Do you have any idea what their volume is?
Not a lot.
I think, if I remember from years back, was when the town of Cover withdrew from using South Seneca as their ambulance provider and
Contracted.
got their own municipal CON and contracted through Trumansburg Ambulance to cover the town of Cover at the southernmost tip of Seneca County.
So,
Listen, my memory's not what it used to be, but I don't remember giving them.
I haven't found any documentation on
There must
that.
have been a time limit on that.
Right. However,
There's no way.
Statute of limitations.
However, looking at regional documentation standard, EMS charts is this region's charting software of choice. We can make that a determination here and say that any other agency needs to use that system, or they need to provide the data to that system.
You cannot, or you're going to have to pay for it.
Or they need to provide the data to that system in the NEMSIS format.
Which we have tried repeatedly with AMR, and AMR has promised us data.
Which we don't
And
get.
AMR has promised us representation.
So I can tell you that Chris Gray had a meeting today, couldn't come.
AMR has actually been
Yes.
quite active with the ALS committee.
Okay.
Yes, they have. Chris Gray comes all the time.
However, they're still not submitting data to the region as required.
I think everybody has to understand with Trumansburg Ambulance, until a short time ago, they were a member of Central New York.
They still are.
And they were complying with the guidance from Central New York, which
But-
is probably why, I was the director down there years ago, and we had
That's fine, but the CON is held by the town of Covert, and they are required to comply with this region's requirements. The town has to, not whoever they contract with.
Is there a stated requirement by this region of
Electronic charting for ALS. Yes, if you do more than
Yes.
400 calls a year, or you do ALS, you must electronically chart.
So,
I can tell you that AMR is not going to go to EMS charts.
I don't expect it
I
to.
don't
However,
expect it to either.
there is a way to send that data over to us at the
And
regional level.
this documentation policy would cover,
Their system.
e-turn, which is terrible if you don't know what it is.
so we need
This
to.
is the issue with ALS Services Inc. in Nassau County. And the reason that ALS Services Inc. was suspended from practice by Nassau County, and that suspension was upheld by both the CMAC and the SEMSCO for refusing to participate in the submission of data.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
This has been a request from this body to AMR for more than 2 years.
This is what I'm going to bring up.
So we need to write 2 letters. Need to send one out to Covert or service covenant.
The town of Culver,
Town of Culver.
technically they're,
And to AMR, refreshing our request
Yes, CC too.
and explaining that we've been very patient, but the time has come for them to comply.
Well,
Yes,
I think there should
If
be
there's
action.
an active motion by this body that this Trumansburg can use paper charting, it should be.
I don't believe it
rescinded.
is.
I don't think there is either.
I don't ever
Been here
recall
for
us
years.
doing that.
that came from Donna, that existed somewhere, that there was a waiver or variance somewhere at some point in time. Where is it? I
We
don't,
waive the waiver.
Well, the group,
Or have
Just
them,
waive the waiver.
have them produce it. I mean, or whatever, I'd have to be like, this is what you're showing.
or if someone's willing to make a motion that in 2018, we're going to upgrade and we're not going to tolerate that anymore, then
Yeah, effective June 1st, this area is, or July 1st, this area is.
June 1st, a little short notice.
90
days.
days,
One-
just say 90 days.
90 days.
Or by the next remix.
Motion?
The region is entirely electronically charting for EMS.
but you have to put caveats on that because we still receive paper charts from first response agencies. Unless you're gonna
And
demand.
providing ELS or BLS service, not first response service.
So the current,
We don't have any mandated.
We can use the same
the
word.
same one, it says it's at least 300 or 400 calls a year. More than that, you have to do electronic, or your ALS. That's the standard, that was back in 2009, 2010.
There's a motion on the floor,
Yeah,
right,
there's a
for this.
motion on the floor for this.
Ah.
It'll be brief. So there's a second motion on the floor.
Where's our sergeant at arms?
You've got me confused. I mean, your discussion, I thought was for another motion.
Right, it is.
And
Which another one came on.
but I don't know what you're doing with that.
Let's do this one
We
first.
never completed this motion.
If we're,
We need to
if we're
complete
this
this one first.
documentation standard, include that in this. That's the standard of the region.
Now I hear a motion to amend the seconded motion. Is that correct?
I would say no. I would say it'd be a separate document. So,
Just to prove that.
so I would say we.
So you-
The seconded motion from the
Let's-
committee.
Unless someone makes a motion where someone has significant discussion against what you're presenting, we're still going to bring this forth as a seconded.
Right, and then, and then let's do that issue as soon as this motion is done. We'll make
So-
another motion.
So someone's either got to have significant discussion, make another, or vote against it, or vote this down.
That's the possibility, yes, sir. I suggest what's on the table, that you handle the seconded motion first, and then you reconsider the discussion on this seconded motion, which applies to a new motion. I think,
If you want to change that document, you have to vote that down.
right.
And then start over.
Right, right.
Or we approve this document and put out a policy statement.
Right, that's what I
We're gonna do it on some
recommend.
other meeting.
Right.
Yes, that's what I would recommend.
Well, it's up to the voting membership, so. Is there any further discussion? All right, we need to have a vote. In favor of the document as presented as a seconded motion, I would vote yes. Is there anyone that's opposed to that? Anyone? So the seconded motion passes. Now, we can discuss
I can't.
the other
So
issue.
bring a new motion to the table stating the ALS, BLS, less than, more than 400 calls, all electronic charting.
300 calls?
Which already exists,
Exists.
we just need to
Re-ratify.
enforce it.
So, but this clears out any waivers that were existing in the midst of time.
Anything IOU waiver, yeah,
And this supersedes any documents prior to this.
This is just house cleaning.
Yeah.
And they must.
Why don't you
I
just say,
think we need to vote on that.
Do we-
But, well, it
do we
needs to be a
wanna-
motion, and it needs, I think we need to go through the whole process,
Do we
correct?
want to include in that the region utilizes EMS charts for data tracking? And that whatever data, if you choose not to use EMS charts, must be submitted to that system? which is possible.
I think that's reasonable.
With the compliance date of what, start of quarter four? I think that's reasonable for everybody. September 1st.
By REMAC. By the
What's the hold
REMAC.
up with AMR? Is there a technological issue that they can't transfer?
I don't think it's technological
I don't
at
think-
all.
no.
No.
I was gonna say, if it's a big process for them to do that, then you gotta be reasonable to allow.
So,
Because the only information that they have to give us in the region are the 911 calls that they're doing
yeah,
here.
so the connection.
We don't have to have access to their inner facilities. And how many 911 calls are
They're
they
doing-
doing?
Developing regional
10 a month, maybe.
I was gonna say maybe a dozen. At one time, they even offered to send us photocopies of the runs.
Well, where were you?
Okay,
So-
so the motion that I'm putting forward, just to clarify, is that any agency over, how many calls? 300 calls that provides BLS or ALS service should be utilizing an electronic medical record. Our preferred vendor is EMS charts, but if you don't use EMS charts, you have to provide all of the NEMSIS data to the council, to
Which level?
the region,
Level, NEMSIS 3 or 2?
which is the bigger one.
3.
Level
New
3.
York State just upgraded to level
Have they
3.
adopted it officially yet? Okay, so yes.
You have to
level
provide
3.
all the NEMSIS
I think they
data to the region.
just gonna,
NEMSIS 3.
One of my lessons from the CMAC meeting, and maybe Dr. Sarrett said should, we said, should it say shall?
Shall.
I'm just gonna,
Sir.
I'll play devil's advocate. I'm a supervisor at AMR. We do 250 calls a year. You're not getting any data. But yet we're still running ALS calls in the region, but you said 300 and I do 250. I'm not getting any data.
It's 300 BLS or ALS. If you are ALS, you
But I do
must.
250 calls.
Yeah, but if you're ALS, you
You're
do
ALS.
more. There's, you do one ALS call.
Okay.
In the, and I know this really only affects one agency. Go ahead.
Sorry. I would recommend you not put a preferred vendor in the motion.
I don't like putting EMS charts, and I think we should just be able to, I think it should actually be
I
just
think
to
it
provide the
should be-
NEMSIS data.
It's got to be NEMSIS 3 data provided electronically, matching into the regional tracking system.
I accept that.
Can you write that?
And the other clarification I would say is, if your agency is ALS, it doesn't have to provide ALS. If your agency is cleared at the ALS level, so that, because I don't want to hear, well, we don't have any paramedics, so we don't have to do it. Like if you've made the jump to provide like you want to be an ALS agency, then
That's part of the
How would
cost.
you be ALS without paramedics? Don't you have?
ALS is defined as AEMT.
What?
ALS is defined as AEMT.
you can be ALS and not have any paramedics.
Hold that certification.
You can hold the certification.
The other thing that I'd like to add to that motion, maybe, and I'm just thinking about compliance and the fact that Trumansburg, who contracts with the town of Colbert as a municipal agency, give them an implementation date of January 1, 2019, so budgets can be put in order, so they can purchase this. That is probably not a budgeted item.
Well, that, and they have to train other people. I mean,
That's it,
I'm
right.
sure a lot of them do.
They can come back
Charge
and ask us for a waiver.
They've got to train the people in 90 days. Russian as far as I'm concerned. Be time to buy a computer, get it set up, get everything done.
In my experience is if someone has some hardship, they're welcome to come back to the council and say, can we get a date change or an exception? I would keep the policy. in
Providing an
place.
implementation plan. I can see that.
Because the flip side is that someone says, well, you give Trumansburg January 1st, but you give us 90
Technically,
days.
this only, we keep saying Trumansburg, but the town of Covert, who holds the seal, will be responsible for this data.
Realistically, the town
Will be
of Colbert is
responsible for providing it to us. So however the township chooses to do that, that's going to be their choice.
They can pay for it, they can make them do it, they can mandate the person they contract with, whatever.
The other thing that was announced at the state council is that there are, and I don't remember how many regions, but the state has received a grant to develop regional bridges.
Yes.
So that any agency in that region will be able to do electronic charting at no cost to the agency.
So one of the things that did come up at the EMS Charts conference that they just held, and apparently several both in Pennsylvania and here in New York in several areas. They have all of the command facilities, which generally in their world they have regional command and then service level. Command generally controls the clinical side, the documentation side, everything from page 2 forwards, where the service controls the pages 1, the billing area, pages 1 and the patient information, patient data. If we look at regionally coming together and buying a lump sum of charts from EMS Charts, we can significantly reduce the cost of your charts. I'm not sure what each agency pays right now, but if we bought 50,000 units of charts and then shared them amongst all the agencies, because we do about 50,000 calls a year in this region, we could, one, include all of the BLSFRs, and all of those folks could do charting on electronic charts, so we get true data for all our calls. And then at the clinical level, all of that information could be controlled under one type of documentation. Everybody would follow the same set of rules. That is an option as well, and I know people don't want to give up their little worlds in different areas of control over their different products, but at the service level you still have control over all the stuff you need to bill. At the clinical level, this body would have control over how it's clinically requesting data and how you chart data. So that's also an option.
But the services would have to buy into not just the concept, but financially.
Right, so the region would have to purchase a block.
But can't the region use the grant from the state to buy it?
We have to look into that. But the region would purchase the command level, and then each agency would only have to pay for the charts that they use that year. Versus if you, like currently, I know it's come up with Stanley O'Gorn, they do about, how many, Mike, 300 calls a year? But they have to pay for 1,000 charts.
Dr. Deva?
Excuse me, sir. I think the discussion is not germane to the motion that's on the floor.
That's correct.
I think you need to handle the motions on the floor now, please.
All right, can you read back the motion?
So the motion is to require all ALS agencies and any BLS agency that does 300 calls or more to use an electronic medical records system. If they choose not to use the system that's compliant with the region, in our case right now it's EMS Charts, that'll be in the motion, they must provide NEMSIS 3 data to program for data collection.
Beth, did you want to contribute some discussion?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, just for permanence, I would just say the current NEMSIS data set. Just so that when they go to NEMSIS 4, 5, and 6, they're not still stuck in 3.
So the current state required NEMSIS.
Yeah.
That's pretty reasonable. Any further discussion on this motion? All right, vote in favor of the motion. Opposed? Now, the further discussion regarding the EMS charts, I think, needs some more investigation and can be brought back either through ALS committee or through program.
And if that's something that other agencies are interested in, we can get pricing from EMS Charts. That's a
I think it would be easier for them to say if they're interested or not once they know some pricing. So if you get some further information, maybe bring that back to the next REMAC meeting, whenever that may be.
So, one last thing for the ALS committee. No more motions, we're done, I promise. Over the summer, at the direction of Dr. David Huff, I'm putting together a specialty care transport tag to come up with some SCT protocols. I've reached out to folks over at Mercy Flight, Medic 55, AMR, Canandaigua, and Finger Lakes to sit on this tag and develop some SCT protocols that hopefully we'll be able to bring to the ALS committee at the September meeting, get it worked through there, and bring that forward as hopefully bring that document forward as a second motion to this body in September. That's what we're working on, and then I guess we also just got our fall project of medical control consults for the fall from the previous meeting. So I've got nothing else from the committee.
I have a question on that. Does that fall under the umbrella of the REMAC to
Which?
develop SCT protocols?
Yes.
does now?
Yes. Because currently SCT does not fall under the umbrella of REMAC. But if we have SCT protocols, it then becomes part of our umbrella.
Yes.
So,
My other question is, I know this was passed, I know this is getting sent to Monroe County. Who, if they want us to come to their MELREMs, who comes from this body?
The RSI.
It would be chair of RSI.
Okay. All right.
quick question for a program. Are we in a position to putting podcasts up on our website?
We don't have a current vendor, but we probably could look into it.
Something we could.
We're utilizing YouTube for all these videos right now.
Could we do something like that if we wanted to?
Yep.
I would see that policy would be a really nice sort of podcast YouTube video that everyone could take a look at, not just read, but actually have someone sort of present it.
We have all the technology to do that.
Presentation or almost like a dialogue, what you're thinking, maybe like a dialogue podcast of, hey, so this is an item, so why don't you explain this? Kind of have it like a dialogue style podcast. That's a good
We
idea.
might get a little more bang out of it.
Yeah.
Mike, you're so photogenic. Think about it.
Okay.
All right. Where's your Flight Central?
All we have is our education day coming up June 1st. There'll be a designated gaming racetrack and some registration spots open still. Welcome to attend if you're interested.
Thank you. Anyone here from LifeNet? Finger Lakes?
Just nothing from Finger Lakes, but we are continuing investigating nitrous for the field. Air gas is looking into the possibility of, instead of having to supply nitrous and oxygen, mixer units from Nitronox, premix 50/50 in tanks. So we've identified an appropriate FDA approved supplier for that. We're just trying to find out the equipment in which to get from the tank to the patient other than at 2,000 pounds per square inch, like cracking down.
Sounds good. We'll wait to hear when we have a safe alternative available. Thank you. Any other committees or agencies that I left out that would like to speak?
Have you reached out to agencies that are using it and see what systems they have?
Almost everybody in the country is using the Nitronox system.
It's the only system.
Yeah, the mixer's $3,600. In 2012, FDA did approve the parent company for air gas to get into the 50/50 mix. They're the only ones I know of in the country that are approved to pre-mix it. It's just a matter of getting, the demand valve and a regulator to fit the tanks. They're using them in Canada. It's just a matter of whether we can okay to use it this side.
For all these years, going to bring the demand valve back. But I'd seen enough of those. Okay. Under old business, we've got collaborative protocols. I could not attend. Were you able to go to that meeting?
I was, and there was absolutely no business conducted at the meeting at all.
Was the barbecue good?
Yeah, it was delicious.
All right. So no change in the collaborative protocol. And you heard any discussion about the Toradol issue?
Nothing specific on that realm, though, and it doesn't apply to this region. They're pretty much the same group of folks who sit on the collaborative committee were tasked Q4 last year or Q1 of this year with the BLS protocol update, statewide BLS protocol update. And those BLS protocols are going to look very, very similar to the BLS side of the collaboratives with a little bit improvement. Such things include IM epinephrine administration for patients with asthma at the BLS level. IM epi is a medical control option with after serial albuterol treatments. So a little bit more aggressive treatments like that in the BLS protocol under standing order. That group has an implementation goal of January 1st, 2019, with Q4 being spent for rollout and training. Final approval of those protocols should take place in September. We've had a lot of buy-in from stakeholders in EMS throughout the state, including the State Trauma Advisory Committee and State EMS for Children. So essentially what that's going to do is that's going to increase the BLS side of the collaboratives and bring the 3 regions who chose not to come into the collaborative umbrella, bring them in to the collaboratives, at least at the BLS side, kicking and screaming a little bit. So not a whole lot of change with the exception of the AMT protocols and the collaboratives so far, but hoping to have a couple, at least phone conferences over the summer months, and maybe I'll hammer the Toradol thing again and see if I can make any progress with it at the collaborative level.
Unfortunately, I've done some searches and I can't find any information on Toradol being given in the pre-hospital setting off Medline, off medical control. I've searched and searched and I just can't find it. So, all right, nothing else from collaborative. Physician credentialing is strictly, I've got to get it done, and you get after me this week or next, I will get that done. Also enrolled business. Has anyone had a chance to look at those REMAC advisories as they went around?
They're over here.
I'm sorry?
I have improvements.
Oh, you have improvements. Okay, then can we talk about those? Who has them? Okay, good.
Which one do you want to discuss?
Well, you can pick any of them.
Jack agreed to them.
Medications.
All right, let me talk about TPA.
Okay, so the only addition I had to TPA, basically the gist is that if you've received training from your med director, you can run TPA en route to from interfacility. The only thing that I would say is I'd take out TPA and I'd say any medication, because I don't see why it has to specifically be a thrombolytic. It might be a tocolytic. It could be as long as you receive training on it and your medical director signed off, I think that that's reasonable to use. Like, because TPA is just one form of lytic. Now, what happens if they're doing streptokinase? Then it doesn't, that policy, that statement doesn't apply. So why not make it more general and say any medication, and then that allows the agencies to keep ahead of the protocols a little bit, in as much as we don't have to keep on going back to advisory every time a new drip comes out. You know, they were doing the,
Is that going to open up the door for agencies that probably shouldn't be doing some of the specialty care to do specialty care? You know, I'm a paramedic on, agency X, and I spoke to my medical director this morning, and he or she said, yeah, let's just make sure that the patient does okay. So I've now been trained on this drug, and I'm now doing specialty care transport. The whole idea behind that advisory was, not just TPA, but thrombolytics. Just thrombolytics.
Take out TPA and put thrombolytics.
Oh, okay. Because I don't necessarily want someone going up strong on a remifentanil drip and this and that.
At least class specific. So.
I had a similar question that Jamie did. So for, let's say, tenecteplase, which isn't a drip, but you give, as of today, you have to have an SCT team transport that patient, correct? So does this change that?
Well, that was a request for this group because we wanted to get those patients out of the EDs faster.
Yes.
I mean, my personal preference, I think we all would prefer that a SCT-trained medic and or nurse transport that patient, but if they're not available in order to avoid delays of that patient, that's where that was the basis for this REMAC advisory. And we can certainly word it any way we want. The idea is if we can't get, weather's bad, no one's flying, and there isn't an SCT medic or truck available for 2 hours, which does happen sometimes, do we keep that patient in the ED?
No.
Or do we get him out with the next available paramedic who, and that's kind of what we want. But I don't think that means, all right, the SCT truck's here and there's a paramedic from XYZ, but XYZ wants to take him. I mean, I still think we should be selecting the SCT train or the air medical train, but it depends on the situation.
So this would allow some adaptability to that.
Right. And on the, if you look at the agency side of it too, CMS defines an SCT ambulance as a paramedic with additional training. This policy statement mandates that additional training. there's a little bit more revenue recovery for the agencies in question here as well, to then bill for SCT, correct?
And who would be responsible for the additional training?
The agency.
The agency.
The agency, the
The way
agency.
your policy says the agency medical director.
I think this raises the interesting question of, I'm representing North Seneca Ambulance, and right now we have 4 paramedics working for us that are former SCT transport meds for another agency, particularly Finger Lakes Ambulance. But we're not currently practicing at that level. Are we SCT trained?
That's not a level. The New York State does not recognize SCT as a level.
That's just it. Okay, I'm a flight paramedic, will be.
Your medical director would say you have received proper training and document that within your records, and then you can transport whatever
So
medical
then the
director.
medical director can individually approve personnel for the agency to do SCT transport.
SCT
I mean, we very
medications.
rarely go to Rochester.
Right, SCT medications and transport
You
is
gotta remember,
outside
SCT is
protocol.
strictly interfacility for
Right.
Medicare and Medicaid.
Yep, so we very rarely ever do an interfacility. It's normally, we pick somebody up, bring them to the hospital, and they say, look, you're here, go.
And
I
that's-
don't think that we're saying that you can do specialty care transports. What we're saying is that in the setting of a stroke or an MI, a STEMI, that's been given a lytic, and the patient needs to get to a higher level of care, we don't want to delay that transport.
Using North Seneca as an example, Finger Lakes is out of trucks. You have a truck available. The Geneva has a patient receiving TPA that needs to go to the city now. We mutual aid the call to you. You have a provider that's cleared to do that transport. You execute the
That's the
transport.
only reason we do an interfacility.
But that's what this is to do. That's for that reason.
Without this advisor, something similar to it, if you get that call, you're going to have to say, no, we can't transport this patient.
Well, the agency can say yes, but the paramedic has to say no. That's the.
Good point.
Do you foresee that you would have additional medics then that would want to receive this? Or?
We'll train all our paramedics.
All of our paramedics are trained already at an SCT level. We're 100% SCT for our paramedics.
It's a little bit of Pandora's box because there's the drugs. The two things for SCT is the drugs and the vent. They're things. And with the vent, you have to have the ability to RSI the patient should the tube come out. So it's kind of like the way that other areas have done it is they have like levels of SCT as well. So the way that I see this advisory is this is like SCT light.
Yeah,
and then
SCT 3. Right.
this
It
is
really
not.
is.
You're not going to be. This does not give you clearance to transport people on a ventilator without a
Internally, we've divided 3 levels of providers at the SCT level. SCT 3 being the lowest. All our paramedics are trained on that. It's all of the various drugs and the drugs and
All those lytics?
all that.
There's a requirement.
The improvement here would then be there would be a bigger pool of medics to provide these types of transports?
Specifically
Basic
from other
lytic
agencies.
patients.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Events we have.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Much smaller group.
So
But let's say somebody receiving alteplase for a stroke who is airway stable, and we determine you don't have a first level SCT team to transport that patient. So we decide we want to get that patient for potential endovascular therapy. So then we get a second level, a third level SCT team. That team would still need the ability to manage an airway during transfer. That,
Which they
But it's
can
going to be
normally,
But not
at basic
yeah.
but not as
ALS level airway. They may not be capable of doing RSI. They could do a BLS management. They could do
They can do intubation.
they can do intubation, but they need RSI meds. They would have to call for an additional
For an
interceding
interceding
service.
Right.
You know, in that case, they'd probably hook up with someone coming from Rochester Research.
basically, all this does now is if you walk in and the person's having a stroke and needs to go to strong, and there's TPA hanging, technically a regular paramedic would have to say, I have to wait until the TPA's run, or you have to give me a nurse.
Right.
And so now this takes out the responsibility and says, as long as the paramedics receive training on when to switch off the medication and the side effects to watch for, those types of things, and the med director signed off, they can now transport that person
Yeah, this,
in an ALS ambulance.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but it's not just until the TPA infusion is done, but it's like for tenecteplase, which is it's within 24 hours of lytic administration, correct?
But right now, even if you've administered that lytic, if you don't have that running, a normal paramedic can take that, whether they understand the consequences or not. This is specifically for medications currently being.
My understanding was that even now, if the lytic had been given, you still needed an SET team to transport the patient.
Only administrating.
I think people have to realize what a small percentage this is going to be. I mean, for me with North Seneca Ambulance, to get one of these transports, Mercy's got to be on the ground, LifeNet's got to be on the ground, and Finger Lakes Ambulance has got to have nobody available. But you have to want to sit in the ventilator.
But it gives the hospitals more options to call extra resources if we have to mutual aid, if flight has to mutual aid.
So I just take out TBA and just put thrombolytics. And I wouldn't be specific about stroke or MI or PE as well.
Just covering that particular class of medication.
Yep.
I like that.
Thrombolytics it is.
Yep. And again, this is not clearing people to be SCT. It's only clearing them for that group of meds, that class of meds. Because the SCT protocols will hopefully include the additional training, the additional equipment, med control, all the other aspects of SCT that this is not covering.
Do you want to individually vote on that one, or do you want to do it as a block?
Yeah, I guess so. Any other discussion on this advisory? In favor? Or opposed?
Next one's going to be extending medication expirations due to shortage.
So the only comment I had about was in the matrix, and it has the matrix for ketamine.
No, that's alternative meds.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was the one that I didn't have any issues with. Was it? There was four.
The medication expiration extension was a 90-day extension if the agencies could not replace under normal costs and normal volumes the medication they currently have, and extending that for 90 days flat out.
Yeah, I just had a question about liability on that, because the statement needs to make clear that the region does not assume any liability for adverse reactions. That's a decision that the agency and the medical director make.
Yep. So
what we don't want to do is say this drug is 1 day beyond its expiration date. The person had a bad reaction to it. The drug company said we should never have used it, and the region said that we could. So sue the region, don't sue the agency.
So the verbiage is the expiration of the expiring medication may be extended for up to 90 days or up to the manufacturer's extended use dates, which have been readily available, with the approval of the agency medical director. So I'll push it back on the agency itself.
As long as the liability is clear that it's not a regional liability.
Can't sue the region. We're already.
We have no money anyway.
I mean, the reality is you can sue anyone for anything at any time, but good luck.
So, any
It just
further
needs to
discussion?
be clear that the agency has the liability as well, because some agencies may just say, we're not going to extend it,
Right.
and that's okay as well.
It's up to the agency medical director. That's the final.
Yeah,
decision.
there's so many shortages this summer that we've got to do something.
Do you want to see some language added down there that the agency will defend and hold harmless the pre-match should they decide to extend it?
I'm just bringing up the question for the region.
It's my understanding, because we're affiliated with the state, that we are already cannot be held liable for that, as long as we're following due diligence. Right now, we're looking out for our patients' welfare. So, any further discussion? In favor? Any opposed?
Next one's going to be use of alternative medications during times of shortage.
So this seems to be like, you did the original one.
I did the
back in
original,
state, like way back when.
1304 would be the original.
The only issue that I had was with the matrix, where it says ketamine for disentanglement, and it gives the first alternative as etomidate,
So
which is regarded as a I know, but it is regarded as an RSI medication only in this area, so it
Right.
would require additional training. I keep it in, but I put it as a fourth alternative. So that allows agencies, if they have it, they can use it as an alternative, but I don't want agencies to go out and get etomidate, like stock etomidate first up as some backdoor into RSI.
I agree with what you say. If they're not an RSI agency, they shouldn't have access to accommodate.
But what they'll
But
do
we're
is they'll have
giving them-
broketamine, and then they'll go out and buy it.
And then, yeah, this gives them permission to go use an alternative medication, should they not be able to get the one.
If they have the alternative medication, and they shouldn't have the alternative medication if they're not an RSI agency, but I have no problem changing it to the back end of the matrix anyway.
Right.
The kids will play.
Right.
They always do.
This is true
So
too.
right now, on that line, the ketamine, the only other alternative would be the midazolam, which we can move forward.
One put a footnote on accommodate for only us RSI agencies. Because even, we're not going to allow a non-RSI agency.
That would be good, just to control the etomidate a little bit.
But are you only going to give it to RSI Tox? Because the agency will have that.
But they already have theoretically training in place for that medication,
For the RSI techs.
so extend it.
Okay. Yeah, we can just mark it just for RSI agencies.
Everyone good with that? All right, so
And
the,
so the only, were there any other alternative or medications that we want alternatives for? There's blanks on the next page.
and I did not put remifentanil into that matrix when I made it, by the way.
Well, somebody did.
I have no, I think, I don't know who did that. We don't have remifentanil available.
So right now for normal saline ringers, obviously, but are there any other meds out there that weren't on the matrix from the 1304 policy statement from the state?
What did we have for Decadron in there?
You don't,
Was Decadron on the list?
not from the state.
Should probably add Cymedrol as an alternative to Decadron, as long as we're doing this.
Yep.
Okay.
I just tag it in now.
Normal dosing, standard.
Yeah, one.
There, Jesse. I mean, if we're up to me, I'd put Droperidol back on that list.
Droperidol's on that list.
Is it?
Yes.
I looked at it before, I didn't see it.
It's up there as an alternative for antiemetic.
Yeah, it's alternative B for Zofran.
Okay.
Is Zofran OTC on there? Or OTD, whatever?
It does say at the very far right, it does say Zofran ODT is an
Yes,
alternative.
it
as
is.
well.
Yeah. Adults only.
Because when we made that list, I think Droperidol was still black box, so.
Why adults only for Zofran? The ODT.
That should not be.
All pediatric doses for the state were weight-based, and so they were getting all, like, crunch up an ODT tablet, so it was just dosing. It's just stupid.
However, if we don't have IV Zofran, which could very easily happen, then we're stuck with, I mean, we could use Phenergan for
Well, the
peds,
original
but
IV dosing of Zofran was 32 milligrams, remember that?
Oh, yes, I do.
Way back when?
I have no problem giving 4 milligrams to a child, so do we want to, we can take that off. It doesn't have to say
I
adult.
keep it in there as an alternative. There's a
I mean,
whole
keep
bunch
the
of
drug, but
antibiotics.
take away the adult only.
I just asked because I use ODT Zofran.
And I do too, and I use 4 milligrams in almost all my kids, so.
I have no problem with that.
That way, it gives us another alternative if we don't have the availability.
And in this, it specifically says if a medical director, agency medical director wants to do something off this list, just bring it to the REMAC, bring it to the regional medical director, throw it out there and see if it sticks. And if it's going to work, if that's what you can get a hold of, and so any other medication original that we currently carry out formulary with an alternative? Or are you guys good with saline index is the two, plus all the other matrix?
What, I don't have that in front of me. For epinephrine, do we have any alternative as far as mixing, dilution? Did we?
Yeah, it's just dilution changes.
Okay.
The 1 to 1,000 mixing. And
All right.
instructions on how to mix.
Vasopressor.
What's that?
Carlotta just said vasopressor.
All right, any other discussion on this? All in favor? What else you got?
The last one is the alternative administration for DEX and mixing it into 100 meg.
Yeah, and it was just because it said me.
Right, so
And I was kind of a little bit like, does that mean that we can still bolus it like we've been doing?
Yeah. You can choose to do either one. So just from the article that I pulled that was referenced in here, just over 55% of female patients had that.
Yeah, I think it's a general principle that you can dilute any medicine except for adenosine, and there's a couple that you use as bolus medications, but any medication, I mean, you can do narcotics in a bag over 10 minutes as well, you know.
Yeah, this came from a request from the ALS committee, so it's...
I get nervous about dictating policy based on quoting one paper. I'd rather just quote general practice, which is you could dilute meds down if you want to decrease the impact of side effects.
Was it written will or may?
It's written as may.
May. So
As
it's
long-
optional.
Yeah, I just didn't, it was kind of,
I don't dilute it.
Or
I
you
mean-
could just leave it as standard practice that you can dilute. We don't need this at all.
there's a lot of noise comes out once every 2 months from the, I always want to make sure it's the right noise, so.
Right.
Like, I don't want questions about this if we really want to focus on something else.
So we want to reduce it by a decibel or two?
Yeah, we don't need it, as long as you're good.
I'm good. Everyone's good?
It's all about
The CLS
documentation.
committee, they won
Yeah.
the brought it. I mean, it's just good standard practice.
But we just simply brought up the topic for a...
Aspirin probably should be diluted if you're given it because it's got extravasation issues.
Straight.
Any other old business? New business is the website. You want to talk about it a little bit?
It's up. It's,
There you
the
go.
new one's up. There is a section for REMAC advisories, which does include some of the advisories that we talked about in QA. These will be put up there. There's a kind of a blank spot over the last 2 years. We can't find those advisories if there were any that existed during the period. But we're still
Bob?
So, but there are ones dating back to 2008, 2009 that are still in place and valid. So, and any advisory that is coming out now is going to have verbiage at the bottom that supersedes any past or other reference. So, other than that, should have meeting dates up there. All these videos here will be posted on our YouTube site. The trainings will be on Facebook under the events.
Thank you. Just one other item in new business. Typically, we do not meet in July, and we meet again in September. We just need a motion to approve that. Although we'd like to keep the option of maybe having a QA group get together, which could be done either live or
I believe we need a QA, right?
phone.
What's that?
For July?
Yeah, we need a QA for July. So at the last REMAC, we discussed providers not getting charts done in a timely fashion. So far this month to date, 90 charts have been closed more than 24 hours from 23 separate agencies. It is a systemic issue. The question is, does REMAC want to request a special session of QA to deal with this one shot? See how.
Can we borrow the gym?
That's 90 charts. There's approximately 55 providers involved in that. So
Is
there
the
are,
gym available that day? And,
I would say yes, we need to meet, but I would also say we should bring the agency heads instead of all these providers.
that is the question.
And be like,
23.
Is it an agency issue or is it a provider issue?
It's an agency issue. The agencies are not,
Do you want to see the providers as well to put some?
we're not room for that.
We can get an auditorium. Maybe they just need to see your face.
That'd be cool.
I don't know.
No, that's pretty rough on them.
that'd be great.
Well, why don't you issue a written warning to every single one of them?
The written warning's probably a good way to start. And we could avoid having a July meeting.
We sent the letter out to all the agencies already.
So if an agency had one late chart and you're gonna bring them in for that?
Well, that's what we're discussing now, that we're maybe not going to do that.
So there are 12 agencies that have more than 5% of their volume to date this month with late charts. Then the rest of them are under 5%. So there may be late charts. I don't know if this body wants to say there's no excuse for late charts, or if there is an excuse for late charts, or currently as the policy stands, the advisory stands, there is no excuse. But in my personal opinion, 24 hours is plenty enough time to write a check.
It should be. It should be. Why don't we?
That's from time of dispatch.
Why don't we start off with sending out some nasty grams?
Okay.
With a little bit sterner wording.
To the providers themselves or the agencies?
To
each
of the agencies, clearly.
Or include the run numbers in the letter that we send out, and the agency is going to be required to...
See, here's a problem, and I'll speak about the agencies that I have. I can go in there, fire and brimstone, and tell them that they've got to do it. I can scare them, I can do whatever. But I know that that's not what other med directors are doing. So there's a disconnect from...
Right.
There's a lot of agencies that get paperwork that sits there for a month until Wednesday, the third Wednesday of the month, that they open all the mail at the same time. You know, and I'm not saying that every agency is like that, but so there's a disconnect from us telling the agencies, and the agencies then, you're assuming the agencies tell the providers, but they may not give a shit.
Right. We can send all that information through EMS charts.
I would send the letter both to the agencies with the text involved, and also inform them that you're sending them you're also sending communication to the techs that are doing this, because
we don't,
at least that forms a connection between
we don't necessarily, the issue with sending it to the provider itself, we don't necessarily have their mailing address short of sending it to that agency.
Send it to the agency.
We have direct contact with them through EMS charts.
You do?
We can send a message directly to them. The next time they sign on, they will have a message from us.
Yeah. I mean,
And they have to acknowledge
you
it.
can send a acknowledge from your account as a medical director, or anybody in this room. We can put you on there and as a QA auditor, and you can send them direct messages at the regional level, and they'll get
And
a QA.
they have to do something with it when they open up EMS charts.
Yeah.
So the question, are we reading the messages that come back for their special report?
Is there a reason? That's really the question.
Right, but I mean, they're putting a reason in, because I've been helping new medics that are still trying to figure out, oh, how do I do this chart? And we write that reason in there. So are they going to get their hands slapped because there was a computer issue, or there was something else that was a snag because they couldn't sign it because it wasn't?
But that goes back to the agency.
I suspect that there are some reasons that are legitimate.
I
I
have
don't
driver
expect
only
that there are
cars.
90 of them
No.
in the month.
Well, you got 90 across the region, you know, so I'm
Understood.
we're working with one particular agency, and Dave knows, we started from scratch. We erased everything that they were doing and rebuilt everything. So they're not coming up as an agency that is in trouble. Penn Yan Ambulance is coming up as their agency that's in trouble. So that makes Penn Yan look really, really bad, and it's not Penn Yan. It's the other agency that we scrapped and are building back up.
So the wording can go out such that you have been identified as having unopened or late closed charts. There may be a good reason for this occurring. We would like to know why. If there is not a good reason, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, because I'm like, I'd hate to have these new EMTs punished right in the beginning for them to say, you know what, this is a volunteer, I'm not there.
What's the agency?
If there's a reason, it should be in a special report.
So we
They're doing special
Here's the
reports.
thing, though.
Are you guys reading
The
special
advisory
reports?
does not allow for excuses.
Right.
If it's more than 24 hours, it's late, period. It doesn't matter what you put in there.
Right, but.
And there's a reason
We
for
don't even
that,
know what
because those
they're waiting
charts
for.
do need to be
Yeah, we
done.
can see
Hospitals have to have access to them. The charts need to be done. On an individual basis, we understand that there might be some reasons for that to occur, and we can look at those. But the overwhelming majority,
We have a very lax policy. What's Melrose? 4 hours?
180 minutes. 3 hours.
3 hours?
3 hours.
3 hours at our neighbor. They have small agents, they have big agencies, but they have a culture of 3 hours.
We don't know how many numbers they look
Right, I
at.
don't know what their numbers are.
They post them.
Well, they post their numbers and they're good.
Right.
They put them online. They're available.
And they hold agencies accountable.
Melrose has been much more accountable. If you don't show up to ALS committee, you lose your ALS privileges. If you don't close your chart, you know, they've got more staff, they got more personnel. There are some other reasons, and I don't necessarily agree with all of their philosophies. And doesn't mean we need to be a junior Melrose, but I think we need to try to close that gap, get more of those charts done, without offending new people. And that's understandable.
It's only a matter of time before I close the chart. And I know everyone says, well, no one ever reads them anyway. It's only a matter of time before it gets turned into a case somewhere. I mean, the physicians that in the hospital, they can't leave the hospital without finishing their charts. Like they get drilled, and you know that the nurses can't just walk out and come back tomorrow and do their charts. It's like it's a requirement of healthcare these days.
And there's proof that delaying your documentation, you leave out key data, you do not write as accurate charts.
If we don't clean up the act, someone will take it over for us, like the state. And if the Bureau takes it over, they're not going to have any leniency whatsoever. So I think we need to try and do
I mean,
it.
I totally understand. This is just an agency that.
I think we can be lenient with that agency, and if you let us know, we can even have a closer look at them. You can whisper it into Nate's ear, and we'll.
Right. I mean, I've talked to Nate.
But we need to try and reduce that number significantly somehow. Motion for July.
Make the motion.
Second.
Is
anyone opposed to not coming here in July?
We're having QA though in July?
I think we
Or do you
can-
want to do a QA just next month? Just QA, just to deal with this chart issue? And then not do anything in July?
When's that gonna be?
That would be the question here, is when does this body want to set the next QA committee?
What was, in July, what was the date supposed to be? For the regular meeting?
Is there another curation here? We're just doing that, or?
17th?
It was on the 17th.
Yeah, it would have been the 17th.
So, anyone opposed to trying to have a QA meeting on the 17th?
Of July?
Yeah. We'll start at 9. We can start an hour later. We need to start at 8.
We'll just move it to June, so we can have all July off.
Because if you're going to...
I'm open.
If you're going to... Well, if you're going to
The
discuss...
only problem is a lot of people are scheduled in June already.
You're, well, that, and you're going to let the issue go another month.
And just bring it till September.
Well, then you're talking 3-4 months now. But specifically looking at May, because that's when we told them they needed to start behaving, it was May 1st. So in a couple days, we'll give the full May's data, and then if you deal with it immediately, I think it's going to send a good message to the agencies. that
Right,
we-
but if you are waiting until the end of May to send something out, you're sending it out June 1st. 17 days doesn't give people enough time to possibly put their schedule for Madison Township Director to come off the road and find someone to fill his shift.
Well,
I guess they should get their chart.
and you're not
Get
doing
your charts.
anything because you're going to send out all these EMS flags as well. So like,
Right, the provider will get an
we've already
EMS
kicked
flag.
sand in their face.
The agency will need to come to QA and say, hey, what's the plan? You have X charts that were late, what's the plan?
Or we could give them till September.
Or you could give them till
I
September.
would say July.
Whatever this group would like to do.
I'm trying to give everyone a break for the summer. I'm trying real hard. Sir?
Mr. Chairman, it would make sense to me, you're going to send out a letter notifying them, correct?
Correct.
You got to wait for their response.
Correct.
Then you have to let them know if they didn't meet some sort of an initial standard, whether it's more than 5 or whatever that number is, then they'll be called to the QA committee. I mean, and I don't think you're going to do all of them all at once.
We can't handle 23 agencies at once.
So
One speech.
I think I think this is probably incremental, and with all of the things you're waiting for feedback for, I'm not sure you're going to be able to make July and have all that information.
I don't see.
Well, the providers won't be able to do their next chart until they acknowledge your QA for the previous chart.
On EMS charts,
On EMS charts, right, so we're gonna get.
not here.
Right, but the region, we have control over EMS charts. We will send the QA out. They have to respond to us immediately on logging in.
Right.
Or it locks them?
Yep.
Yes.
So if we send out notifications this week or next to every one of the people we have with who are not fishing their charts, and tell them that this cannot be tolerated, and give them an opportunity to correct themselves through July and August, then reevaluate by September, that's unreasonable. And that way it gives everyone the summer off. All right. So everyone agrees with July, no July meeting whatsoever, we'll meet again in September. All right, everyone have a very healthy and safe summer, and thank you for your time and efforts.